Hello, students. Good afternoon today. Joseph Bonaparte doing recording interview with Kevin Owocki. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us. I would like to start by introducing yourself.
Hey, I'm Kevin Owocki. I am a software engineer that I have a computer science degree from University of Delaware in 2006. So just doing some math. I've been practicing software engineering for almost 20 years now. And I am mostly known these days as the founder of Gitcoin, which is one of the top crowdfunding platforms in the Web3 ecosystem and has recently turned itself from a company into a DAO. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. Just kind of working in Web3, trying to create regenerative economies using Web3.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kevin, for this introduction. The first question I want to ask you is about blockchain applications. Before this recording this video, I was reading that Russian arms start using blockchain. So what is this technology? And I just met in the morning a lady, she said 1/3 of the people who want to study engineering because of blockchain, or they want to study engineering in the blockchain field. So what is the blockchain? This black box, we hear about it a lot.
Yeah, so using blockchain technology, we can now send financial value across the internet. Really, we can send it's something that's scarce in a digital environment across the internet. So I think the opportunity space is quite large. And, I'm 38 now. And so I grew up when the internet was getting adoption. And I remember now computers could send information across a computer network. And because of that, anything that was rewritten or that relied on information in society was rewritten by the internet, because computers could send internet across or information across the internet without an intermediary. And that rewrote how we did entertainment, media, politics. Social media didn't even exist before the internet. And I think the situation is very much the same with blockchain. Now we can send value and scarcity across the internet without an intermediary. So that's going to change how we fund digital art. That's going to change how we do finance. It's going to change how we do insurance. It's going to change how we do crowdfunding, which is kind of my thing. And so the opportunity space here is quite vast. There's an opportunity to rewrite the financial layer of society to be more open source, to be more regenerative, if those are our values. But the double-edged sword here is that we can now program our values into our money. And so if your values are public goods and regeneration and crowdfunding like mine are, then you can build stuff like that. But if you're using it for cyber warfare or Ponzi schemes, then you can program those values into your money, which is quite scary. So like many technologies, this is a double-edged sword, and it just depends on what you use it for, whether it's good or bad for humanity. I'm a strong believer that we should be playing long-term games that help bring communities together and build trust in organizations through the internet. But yeah, that's how you can square someone like me building hippy dippy stuff like Gitcoin on the blockchain, and also I think you said the Russian army or something like that.
Yes, they start using. They analyze what happened with them in the defeat, and the problem is there are a lot of weapons here, and there's no weapon here, and they use decentralized blockchain, so every captain can know where are the weapons if he needs something or she needs something. I was amazed to read that in the morning. As I was preparing my interview with you, I was reading who using blockchain, and the first thing came the Russian army.
Yeah, I haven't read about that specifically, but cryptography is really powerful, so it's not surprising to me that people are using it for all sorts of stuff.
Excellent. The second question is, you mentioned Web3 technology, which is, I'm working in a company which is decentralized education with metaverse technology. So what is that Web3? What is that Web3? Number one, what application? And you mentioned a lot about Gitcoin.
Yeah. So I think that there's not a strong consensus on what Web3 is, but I'll just give you a couple definitions that I've heard. Web 1 was kind of the time period from the 90s into the early 2000s, in which we had things like GeoCities, where you could surf the academic web, and you had to have HTML skills to publish a website. Web 2 was the removal of the need for you to have HTML skills to publish a website. So starting with MySpace, you could have a profile without any sort of technical skills on a social network. And then Facebook made it even easier. And then in Web 2, we also got these iPhone things. So now we have these computers in our pocket. Oh, let me find my webcam. Here's my computer in my pocket. So the mobile web was Web 2. And so you're going from Web 1, which is read web, to Web 2, which was the read write web. And now the idea with the Web 3 is that it's the read, write, and govern web. So basically with the DAO and with NFTs, there's a credibly neutral base layer in which we can govern our assets and our relations with each other without having to rely on a big tech company like Twitter or Facebook. And, you know, I think the reason why it's important is that we wanted to have property rights digitally. So basically property rights were a really big deal when in the feudal ages we moved from like the lords and kings can take anything that you ever own to no, now self-sovereign own this property and you can't kick me off it. And I think that it's very much similar with web property rights. Now with blockchains, you've got a credibly neutral base layer that Zuckerberg can't deplatform you. And I think that that's a really powerful idea, is this read, write, govern kind of web. So anyway, the ways that you can taxonomy Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3 are like either as eras in time. The 90s were kind of like Web 1, the 2000s to 2010s were Web 2, and then like the 2010s to 2020s are Web 3. Or you can do read web, read write web,
Right.
and then read write govern web as the taxonomy. And I'll also say that like there's even dissent about that. Like there are a bunch of people in the 2010s who are trying to do semantic web, which is basically taking a bunch of data of everything and making it into XML data stores and making them interoperable with each other. And those people would call themselves Web 3 also. So there's not even consensus about that. But yeah, that's some ways to think about it.
Kevin, this is such an amazing thing. Read and write, and govern. Let's talk about, so we know the read, we know read and write in Facebook or TikTok or those, Twitter. The govern, how much add to the improving the societal outcome? To be a govern, also you are part of making decision. Can you explain what do you mean by govern and how that impact societal outcome?
Yeah, well, I think the honest answer is that no one really knows yet. But we've got these primitives for doing shared governance of resources together via blockchains. And you know, one of a very simple example is this thing called a gnosis safe, which is what's called a multi-sig. Now that sounds scary, but multi-sig just means multi-signature wallet. So you and I could spin up a multi-sig, and we could set M of N signature threshold. I know that sounds scary, but that's just a way of saying that we're going to make a 2 of 2 signature threshold so that both of us have to sign a transaction to move any assets in and out of that wallet. Now, what does that do? That means that, well, for me and you, it's not that, you know, not that hard because we both live in Colorado. I think you're in Colorado, right? But imagine that we have a digital first organization where I'm in Colorado, you're in New York. We've got another collaborator in South Africa, and we've got another one in the Ukraine. Where do we domicile our shared assets? Well, if we do it in Colorado, then everyone has to fly out to me to sue my ass if I ever fuck them over. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse in your class, excuse me.
No, students here, education, yeah.
Yeah. But so like the cool thing about now we can govern these things natively on the Ethereum blockchain. And if all 4 of us have to sign a transaction from across the world, then basically everyone's on equal footing from a legal perspective in being able to sign transactions and move. So it enables common enterprise across the world. And, you know, I wouldn't recommend a 4 of 4 multi-sig wallet because like, what if one of us goes missing? Then we can't move any of those assets. A better design is like a 3 of 5 or like a 2 of 4 multi-sig. That's a very simple example of like governance of a digital asset using a multi-signature wallet. And there's a bunch of other more advanced kind of DAO type stuff that you can do from there.
That's amazing. You mentioned that. For example, my personal family, we have Ukrainian, we have Israeli, you have US, and we transfer money to European, EU, Euro. So we're using basically Greener, Ukrainian, European currency, Euro, Israeli shekel, and US dollar, 4 currencies. As a result, in the exchange that I do, a lot of differences. We call this in big business, they call it swap. I just did a business, an estimate. There's a $6 trillion swap, the swap market between dollar Chinese currency, dollar Canadian currency, Mexican, European currency. Do you think the world, we all agree that one currency world is better served, and you do a lot of easy mobilization of capital. But do you think what are the key obstacles for one world currency?
Well, so I have a computer science degree, not a finance degree.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I could speculate, but I don't feel super qualified to answer that question. I mean, I do think that since Bretton Woods and World War II, the United States kind of assembled international trade such that a lot of trade is done in the U.S. dollar. So you could argue that there's already a pretty dominant world currency, but I don't know how this all plays out in terms of like us all having one world currency or anything like that. I think a more interesting world is a plurality of currencies that not only are based around each different nation state trading with each other, but what if we had network states? So basically digital organizations that are as large and serious as physical states that have their own currencies. And that's what Bitcoin and Ethereum kind of are, is that they're non-state digital currencies. And I think a plurality of currencies is really interesting for diversity and plurality reasons. But I'm a computer science guy. I don't know much about. I'm learning finance along the way. Yeah, I'll say.
So the reason I mentioned this question, thank you so much, and I like your input about plurality. Is
Yeah.
Ethereum and crypto Bitcoin, for example, one of the key application is you didn't need to have an exchange fees if you want to transfer. And we know that the American culture become to be more diverse, more global, the same other nations. So we thought that the emergence of crypto and blockchain technology, peer-to-peer, it ease up some of the fees and improve overall the societal outcome. I want to turn to something of interest about Gitcoin, your company, that you're a founder of Gitcoin. Why, tell us a story about it and why we need Gitcoin in our life, how Gitcoin impact the societal outcome.
Sure. Do you want like the 30-second version or the 2-minute or the 5-minute version?
3 minutes, 5 minutes.
Okay.
I'd love to hear the whole story.
So I'm a software engineer, like I said, and I have, through the course of my Web 2 career, I've hired about 40 software engineers, and I started Gitcoin as a way of recruiting software engineers and paying them in crypto tokens. So basically disintermediating recruiters and recruiting software engineers directly, but also supporting them for working on open source software. And the whole big idea behind Gitcoin was that, hey, it's been really hard to fund open source in the past, but now we've got a multi-billion-dollar open source economy. Crypto is basically open source money. And maybe some of the money that used to go to back offices on Wall Street in the old economy will now be routed through open source software in the new economy. And so the big idea was just basically like everyone in this gold rush of crypto needs software engineers. Why don't we sell pickaxes to the gold miner or to the gold miners? Is like an old 1840s trope. It like don't mine the gold, sell pickaxes to the gold miners. Well, my version of that was helping software engineers get recruited into these organizations, and that's how I founded Gitcoin. Gitcoin has iterated a lot since then. We had 5 different products in 2017. We've since narrowed it down to 1 or 2. And now Gitcoin Grants is the flagship product. And Gitcoin Grants, Vitalik Buterin has called a significant pillar of the Ethereum ecosystem because so many projects have relied on it to get funding. And there is a contradiction in there because Ethereum is a decentralized ecosystem, and because I'm a dummy, built Gitcoin to be centralized when I started it. So there's a contradiction there. You can have a centralized pillar of a decentralized ecosystem. And by the way, like at this point, I first started Gitcoin, who cares about who governs it because there's nothing happening there. But now $72 million worth of funding has gone through it. So it matters who governs Gitcoin. So at that point, we decided to turn Gitcoin into a DAO. So we took a company and turned it into a DAO, which is kind of like taking an apple and turning it into an orange. Yeah, so Gitcoin has done 15 rounds of Gitcoin grants funding, and I can go into what that means. And it's now iterating every quarter towards becoming a DAO, which means it's governed by smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain, as opposed to governed by a Delaware C corp with a board of directors and shareholders and stuff like that. So, yeah, I guess like TLDR, I started Gitcoin because I wanted to help open source software developers get coins, pun intended. And it's been through 5 different iterations of products and 15 rounds of quadratic funding, and it's been iterating on its governance structure ever since. So Gitcoin's kind of an evolutionary organization that evolves every quarter, and I was just kind of the founder of it, the first person to the dance. And it's now being governed by 50 people all across the world at gitcoindao.com. So I'm actually no longer involved in management or governance of the DAO. I've decentralized my power in the DAO to the GTC holders and to the people who work on Gitcoin DAO. And that's been quite a process of letting go. I know that most of your students are college students. And,
Yes.
I imagine that my kids are small, so I don't know what it's like, but I imagine that letting go of Gitcoin DAO is somewhat like letting your kid go off to college. Like you have to let it go, even though you still love it. But yeah, that's happy to dive in on any Gitcoin things that you're related or interested in.
Excellent. You mentioned the DAO, which is Digital Audio Workshop
Uh, Digital Autonomous Organization,
or
close.
organization. Sorry. Can you
Yeah.
explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, the simplest explanation is that a company is governed by corporate law within a state jurisdiction. A DAO is governed by smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain. There can be other blockchains, but Ethereum just happens to be the one that I use. So, like I said, like with that multi-sig is that it allows people to have a shared enterprise from anywhere in the world. A DAO is a better structure for a global movement to fund open source like Gitcoin, because you can be in Canada, you can be in South Africa, you can be in Ukraine, you can be in China, and you can still have access to the Ethereum blockchain and equal access to the smart contracts from anywhere in the world. So DAOs are a great way of organizing collective action on the internet native.
Excellent. Excellent. I have a question to you about crypto on blockchain. Usually
Sure.
people, when they say crypto, when they say blockchain, immediately cryptocurrency came to their mind, Bitcoin. So what are the relationship between the two?
Between blockchain and cryptocurrency?
Yeah.
So blockchains are basically a network of computers that produce a shared ledger. And so basically you can imagine that you can imagine that these computers need to come to consensus about what the state of that shared ledger is. And are your students computer science students at all?
No, they are finance students. I should.
Okay, finance
Yeah.
students. Cool. So imagine that you've got like a SQL database or like some sort of database where I'm keeping track of your balance and my balance, Joseph. So like you have $10 and I have $1. Well, if I'm the administrator, if I have root access over that system, I can just say, well, F you, I'm going to take $9 from you. And now I have the money. And so the whole idea with blockchains is to produce a distributed ledger where none of us has root access over the balance of the coins. And so blockchains are a way of using a consensus protocol to continually update the ledger of transactions in such a way that they're all partially responsible for maintaining the ledger, but no one has root access over it. Now, that's important because then no one can change the balances of anyone else. But the problem is that you need an incentive mechanism for those computers to actually run the software that maintains the ledger. And that's where cryptocurrency comes into play. So basically, in exchange for maintaining the ledger on Bitcoin miners get BTC, which is the native currency of Bitcoin. In exchange for maintaining the ledger of Ethereum transactions, then people get ETH. And I'm actually gonna show you real quick that I've got a Ethereum staking machine right here. That's what this machine is right here. It's live validating transactions on the Ethereum network right behind me as I speak to you.
Wow.
So running a staker is a great way of earning more tokens on the crypto economic network, but you're also securing the network as you do it. So it's quite a fun computing problem to be participating in.
Excellent. I made you a co-host also, so if you want to share your screen about something about
Okay,
Gitcoin, I'm happy to offer that to
cool.
our students. Another question I have for you is personal. You are an innovative person. You are an innovation business, and what inspires you? Who's your role model? Elon Musk or Mr. Tesla or Franklin?
Yeah.
Tell us about your history of being innovative. Why not you're working for Apple, for example?
Yeah, great question. Well, who inspires me? I mean, I think it's anyone who is trying to consume more knowledge and make a dent in the universe. So the first category, consuming more knowledge, is scientists, people who are assembling from first principles and empirical data, what's going on in the world. And I think that, it's just, I just, science gives us so much. I mean, from vaccines to medicine to understand the astronomy pictures that are coming out of the new telescope are just amazing and so cool. My old man, my dad's a physicist, and he's like, one of my inspirations when it comes to understanding the universe and always pushing the vanguard of knowledge. And so scientists is one category. I'd say entrepreneurs is another category. I worked in corporate America for a few years after school, and I worked as a busboy at Outback Steakhouse when I was in high school, and I just didn't like the rigidity of not having control of my own schedule. And I pretty early started making more money online than I ran a web startup out of my parents' house in high school, and there were nights where I would make more money on the internet than I did as my job as a busboy. So like that taught me pretty early that it's fun
Amazing.
to try to get money like by hustling online. And yeah, so I don't know. Any entrepreneur and any scientist is the answer of who inspires me.
Excellent. If a student's interested in entrepreneurship and innovation, do you have a recommendation? What
Yeah,
mistakes not to do? What good ideas to pursue?
yeah. I consider myself to be in an OODA loop all the time. An OODA loop means you're observing, you're orienting, you're deciding what to do, and then you're acting, and then you figure out how that goes, and then you orient and observe and decide again. So you go through the loop again. So, I Gitcoin was like my seventh side project, and it's like my fourth professional startup, and there's just a graveyard of failed projects along the way. I think the most important thing you can do is start hustling and start coming up with hypotheses about what a startup can be, and then you build an MVP, which stands for a minimum viable product, and then you launch it, and it probably won't work, but if it does work, like that's how I started Gitcoin. Like it probably wasn't going to work, but it became Gitcoin because I just kept on hustling and leaning in. Um, Now, once you go through that, like just being persistent is a skill, but I also found that it's really nice not to be lonely, to surround myself with other entrepreneurs. And I think that one of the great things about your class and is that people will be surrounded by other people with shared interests to them. I went through Techstars, which is a seed stage accelerator here in Boulder, Colorado, where they basically took 10 teams of 2 or 3 people each. And, I went through Techstars when I was 22, and I had no business being the CTO of anything, but they threw me in the deep end. They gave us a 3-month boot camp, and they gave us a network, and then they put us in front of investors at the end of the time. And that's where I learned to hustle. That's where I learned the art of entrepreneurship, which is a lifetime journey. So I'd say start with the OODA loop, and then start just adding resources that make you better at spinning through that OODA loop, and hustle and enjoy the ride along the way.
Excellent, brilliant. I want to ask you something, maybe you can help us. We hear a lot about regulation of blockchain and crypto. How is that? Is that something bad or something good, regulating? Can we regulate this domain?
Can we? Well, I mean, so again, I'm a software engineer, and if you ask me a question about finance, I'll say I'm not a finance
Okay, yeah,
person. If you ask
that's
me
right.
about law, I'll say I'm not a lawyer. So not legal advice, but I do think that there are scams out there, and that there are shady Ponzi schemes out there, and I would love to prevent people from losing money to them. And so I do think regulation is a good thing if it keeps out the Ponzi schemes and the scams. I think that the real fine line that that Congress is going to be walking through over the next couple of years is how to prevent the scams, but also to how do we not drive away innovation as we do it. And you know, one of the problems I think that we've seen with FTX, which is this crypto exchange that just
Right.
collapsed, is that they incorporated and they domiciled offshore in the Bahamas, because being onshore in the United States was too risky for them legally. And so I really think that the consumers in the United States would be better protected if companies that were serving U.S. consumers were domiciled in the United States. And in order to do that, there has to be a mechanism for regulating crypto in which the scams are kept out, but the good projects want to domicile in the United States. So that's the trick, and I don't know where the chips are going to fall, but I'm watching closely like everyone else.
Excellent. I have two questions. I'll let you go then. The first one, you're an engineering person. What's your future in engineering? What's the next idea? And everybody would like to know what's the next idea. No, what do you think the next idea?
Yeah, well, let me get my crystal ball out and ask you what's the next idea. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd be retired on an island somewhere if I knew what the next idea was going to be. Actually, that's not true. I love what I do, and I would probably still be doing it. So what's the next idea? This kind of gets to a question of like, how do we ascertain knowledge about the world? And I do think that there are two ways really to ascertain knowledge that are really solid. The first is empirical. So basically, empirically, which is by experience, I see that I'm on a Zoom call with you, Yosef. I see that the price of Ether at this moment is 1340. Those are things that I'm empirically experiencing through observation and interacting with my environment. So that's one way of deducing knowledge. Another way of deducing knowledge is from first principles. So basically, first principles of the world, you can deduce forward knowledge. And like, you know, like a very simple example of that is like, I know gravity exists, and I know that if I drop these AirPods, they're going to fall into my hand because I understand the law of physics, the first principles of the earth having a gravitational field. And so, you know, like first principles knowledge in Web3 and in crypto is like, I think I've already like, you can program your values into your money. From first principles, we've got smart contracts that are implemented into money, so we can program our values into our money. And so from that knowledge, I know that there'll be a whole array of different crypto economic projects that just depend on people's values. For Gitcoin, it's about funding open source and public goods and creating a better world for the world's software developers. For something like ENS, it's about making it easy to build to like have a recognizable identifier domain names that can't be seized from you for anywhere. And so that's an example of first principles knowledge. So when you ask me what's the next big idea, I don't know the answer to that, but empirically I can observe trends like AI and Web3 and VR and stuff like that. And from first principles, I can deduce more knowledge the more first principles I have. So I'm always trying to pick up more empirical knowledge and more first principles knowledge. And you know, I think that that's kind of like how I've gone about trying to find the next thing. Oh, another cheat code that you can have is you can just invite experts to come to spaces that you hold and have them explain things to you, which is a life hack I think you've maybe figured out by being a teacher. But I'm a meetup organizer. I host Twitter spaces, and you know, it's easier than reading a 400-page book about something, inviting the author to come on my Twitter spaces and explain it to me for 45 minutes. So as I'm saying it, I think that this is maybe a life hack that you figured out because you invited me here to explain Web3 to you. So those are some ways that you can figure out what's next.
Excellent, excellent. The last thing I want to ask, great, very, very insightful, very amazing, deep. I'm taking a lot of notes, by the way. I'm writing a lot of notes. I'm not sure if you can see. Yeah. The last question is, do you live in Colorado or different state? You are,
Colorado, down by
yeah,
Boulder, yeah.
yeah. So what do you think the Colorado as a state, where you place it in the nation in terms of Web3, blockchain, in this emerging new technology? Are we in the head, leading the nation, or are we behind or lagging?
Yeah, well, I think one of the cool things about Web3 is that you can lead and innovate from anywhere, and I really like
That's
that
right.
about Web3. And I really like the idea that someone in South Africa or someone in Eastern Europe can have access to the same financial tools that I can in the United States. You know, we're very privileged to have access to the dollar, which, you know, we complain about 8% inflation every year. But if you're in Argentina and you're getting 80% inflation, holy cow, you want to have a US based stablecoin. So I mean, yeah, but to actually answer your question, Governor Polis is doing really great things to attract innovators to the state. If you can live anywhere, why not live in a beautiful state like Colorado with sunshine and clean air and mountains behind you? And so I think that the Colorado's got that going for it. ETH Denver is great. That's an annual blockchain conference that's hosted out of Colorado. And I think that Colorado is doing a really great job, and that's why I've decided to live here.
Excellent. That's amazing. The final thing is I want to have is if you have a question for me, for us, would you have do you want to have recommendation for CU, University of Colorado at Denver, CU Denver? Where we can grow, where we can do something better, serve our community.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that open source software is a public good. $400 billion per year in economic value is created by open source software. And I think that it's really a pleasure to be able to support open source with Gitcoin. I also think that education is a public good because the more people are educated and informed citizens and are able to earn a living, then that makes society as a whole better. And I think that education is a really important part of building civil society and democracy in the 21st century. But I don't know how to do it. You all are the experts in education, and so I don't really have any advice for Denver other than continue to invite people from industry to speak to your students and continue to build those bridges with industry and with the community. And I'm really excited to see where this course that you're doing goes. I think you said it's the first time you've done this course. Is that right?
Correct. This is the first class, and we do
Yeah.
it online, so we can make it easier on the students to take the class, get some feedback, and I'm gonna share it with you definitely after we finish the class. Yes, this is our first try with the crypto and blockchain technology.
That's great.
Okay, well, that's the end of our guest speaker. Thank you so much, Kevin, for joining
Great.
us. And we were very happy with the information you shared with us and with your knowledge. And how do you see the future for crypto and blockchain, especially blockchain as a technology person? Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.